Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast, show number 56. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of On Purpose Investor Podcast. Before we dive in today, we want to put out a little disclaimer. I have a couple of licenses, and I have a driver's license, a marriage license, and a couple of military certificates.
And a concealed carry license.
A concealed carry license. But what I do not have is I do not have any finance license. I do not have any broker license. I do not have a real estate license. I am a layman.
Yeah.
And Tiffany is a layman.
Yeah. I mean, I have finance experience, but we are not giving financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. And we hope you enjoy it, but don't sue us for saying we told you to take out tons of debt.
Yeah. And if you do play with a chainsaw, be careful.
Yeah.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host, Eric and Tiffany Vogel. We've spent several hard years building a rental property portfolio so we can have more time with our family and live our ideal life. Now, finding your path can be difficult, so we're here to guide you along the way with lessons, tips, and tricks to design and implement your dream life. Now, sit back, turn up the volume, smash that follow button, and get ready for this episode of the On Purpose Investor. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Eric.
Wow.
Eric! Had to get back with it. With my amazing, lovely co-host,
Tiffany.
With the beautiful red hair and the lovely smile and that awesome swagger of a sweatshirt.
Yeah. We went ziplining on our trip. We're back home now. Coolest ziplining experience. I ziplined over a bear.
She's not kidding.
Yeah.
She barely made it.
That was bad. This is what I live with, y'all.
So we just got back from our trip. Our last episode, we actually recorded in the van. So hopefully that audio wasn't terribly too bad. But we had a great time up at the Smoky Mountains. We went hiking up to a waterfall.
Yes.
Which was strange. We kept going up and up and up. We're 2,000 feet up above. And it's like, how? The water's got to start somewhere. We're almost at the top of this mountain. How is there going to be a waterfall if we're at the top?
Oh, there was.
But prove me wrong. We got up there like 100-foot rock face with like a 2-foot waterfall stream coming down it.
Yeah, it was a cute little waterfall.
It was cute. The rock was more impressive than the waterfall, honestly.
What kind of shocked me was like going up, we got really hot and sweaty because it was warm out. And then we sat there and ate lunch and it got cold.
Freezing.
So strange.
Was it the elevation?
Maybe.
Or was it that we just sweat and
I think we were like, gross.
It's probably that.
Well, today we're talking my favorite finance personality.
So this show, episode number 56, is called Is Dave Ramsey Right When He Says Investing in Real Estate with Debt is Dumb and Risky?
Yeah. I love watching Dave. I watch him on YouTube, like little clips, and Eric's just like, oh God, here we go again.
There was a period of time that no matter what time of day, middle of the night, no matter what, if you woke up in the middle of the night and you're like, I can't get back to sleep.
Okay.
I'd like open my eyes and like, what is going on over there? I'm just watching Dave.
I think that was when I was pregnant, but yeah, I enjoy a mix of him yelling at people and just somehow amassing like $300,000 in student loan debt is what I watched this morning.
There's so many real estate investors out there that are teachers that call Dave Ramsey wrong about pretty much everything he does. I am definitely not going to say he's wrong. I will say he's wrong for some.
Yeah.
He's not right for everyone. And if we wanted like a really edgy title, we would say Dave Ramsey's wrong.
Right. And it's already clickbaity enough to put Dave Ramsey in the title. I like his principles. I like him. I enjoy watching him, especially when he starts going on his rants. Like, that's just funny to me. It's like watching my stepdad.
Yeah. I love him. Ask me, how am I doing?
Oh, how are you doing today?
Better than I deserve.
And my favorite is when he asked them, how are you doing? And they're like, oh, better than I deserve. And like throw it right back at him. It's a sweet little banter.
It is sweet. But why is Dave Ramsey right? And why is Dave Ramsey wrong? So we're going to spend this episode talking about how using debt with real estate, while it can be risky, there are risks to any type of debt, but how
to do it safely,
and how debt is really the tool you need to grow your business.
Depending on what your goals are. And I think that's what the overall theme of this is going to be, is it all depends on what your goals are, on what you need to do.
So let's start it out. Why does Dave even have a show? How did he get his name?
Yeah.
Where did he come from? Like, what's happening with Dave?
So I know all the things, Dave.
Let's hear it.
He started in real estate in his early to mid 20s, got a $4 million portfolio. He says he has about $1 million in equity, and he was using like lines of credit and short-term loans, and some government regulations changed. The banks decided to call his notes due. So he had 90 days to find, I think it was about $2 million, and he couldn't. Now, my question is, I don't know why he didn't sell off properties. If he had $1 million in equity, he could,
Who knows what the structure of those loans were?
Right.
They could have been 100% LTV. He could have been making negative AM payments.
Right.
Or negative AM structured.
I believe it was in the 80s. So.
It could have been 100% financed.
Right. There's a lot that we don't know.
Property values could have went down.
And there's also like speculation on the interwebs. So what it says on Ramsey Solutions, his website, is $4 million portfolio, $1 million in equity, and they got called due. So I've heard him say it on other episodes that he was in essence using like hard money and using short-term loans to try to flip a bunch of properties, and got caught in a bad spot. And he didn't have the reserves needed to fund payments on it. He didn't have a backup plan of how to raise that money if he needed to. There were a lot of things. All of us make crazy mistakes.
Yeah.
And he was young. And I think it's just an opportunity to learn from his mistakes. And I don't know, take it as a healthy fear when it comes to debt, but know what tool you're using, I guess.
Right. So what cut Dave's arm off was his structure of his loans. It wasn't the debt exactly.
Yeah.
It was the structure. And it was his inability to implement a contingency plan that he may not have had.
Right. Well, I mean, he had, I believe it said 1 million of the loans was with one lender. So that one lender called $1 million due. And then not too long later, I read 800,000 was called due.
Yeah.
So if he had a $4 million portfolio, one was equity, that means 3 in loans. That means, call it 2/3 of his loans were called all at once.
Yeah. And unless you have financial friends out there that you have already built relationships with to say, hey, I've got this portfolio and the market's changing. A, I'm going to go ahead and get out of it.
Right.
B, I'm going to call up my financial friends and see what can they do to help me.
Yeah.
In the sense of, can I move from this mortgage into private money?
Yeah. Or can I sell off these properties?
Right.
Pay off the loan, take my $1 million and move on. There's a lot of unknowns with his story, but we know that he teaches no debt, no credit cards, nothing. And within his baby steps, you save $1,000 and then you pay off every bit of debt you have. And then you start saving for retirement and your college education fund for your kids and buying a house and, the later things.
So I just want to put this in there like as a stick. Dave Ramsey works for you if you have debt intolerance, which can be shifted. That mindset can be shifted by learning how good debt works, right? So if you have debt intolerance, if you want to work at your job until you hit retirement age.
Right.
So there's the debt intolerance. There is the want to work at your job until you retire. And if you have no interest in building passive income.
Well,
completely passive income.
I wouldn't agree with that last one, because once you reach certain milestones in his baby steps program, then he'll recommend you buy rentals, but with 100% cash, no debt.
Okay.
And he encourages you to buy a 15-year mortgage on your primary.
Okay.
And have it paid down as quickly as possible. So, and the percentage of your total take-home pay that your mortgage should be it's reasonable, but when you put it on a 15-year note, it's a little aggressive. So he's very much like, pay off the debt. Even if it's like you have a car that you're going to take a hit on if you sell it, like your situation, we rolled negative equity, but
no, we didn't. I did.
Yeah. Okay. We wrote a check to sell that car. And his philosophy is, if you don't have the money to get out of that car payment and write that check, you could get a personal loan from a credit union and take out a $20,000 loan on a car, or $40,000 probably, is worse than having a $5,000 loan from a credit union, even though you have nothing to show for that $5,000.
Right.
So I struggle with that a little bit, because at least you have a car you can drive versus just debt you're trying to pay off.
Well, maybe it's $5,000 of negative equity that you have to pay off, and you ask that credit union for $7,500, and you use the $5,000 to pay off that negative equity and $2,500 to buy a clunker.
Yeah. So I guess with Dave and debt in general, debt is a tool, and that's how we view it. It is a tool in our toolbox, and it is something we use to scale. If we had to save up 100% for all of our deals,
we would probably have one deal.
Right. And we'd still be working, and we were able to grow a lot faster because we used debt. But we made sure that we had good debt.
If we were to, put good debt in a box and wrap it up as a gift and give it to someone and say, unwrap this and pull out each piece, this is what good debt looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's backed by an asset is the number one criteria that produces cash flow.
Okay.
So going into Rich Dad and Robert Kiyosaki philosophy, debt on an asset is a good thing. Debt on a liability is a bad thing.
Okay.
And an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money away.
Yeah.
So we have talked about going Dave on our personal side.
Yeah, we have.
And we're going to pay off our primary residence. We don't have car notes, but the plan is we use a credit card and pay it off each month. But the plan is personally, we are eventually going to wipe out all of our personal debt, but we'll keep our debt on the rentals because it is a tool.
Right. So inside of this box of good debt, you have debt that is assigned to a piece of property or something that produces cash flow.
Yes.
Another part of the good debt is whatever's in that box that is attached to that debt is worth more than what that debt is for.
And I would say 75 or less, probably more like 70% or less.
So if you struggle with numbers like I do, there's a rock in that box, and
that rock is worth $1.
No, the rock is worth $100.
Okay.
And on that rock is an IOU to the bank that says you owe me $50 or you owe me $75, but the rock is worth $100.
Right.
That would be good debt. Now, it's only good debt if Patrick the Star is living underneath that rock and paying rent. If you don't know what Patrick the Star is, that's SpongeBob throwback. Sorry.
All right. Thanks for listening to us.
But that is good debt. It's a rock that's worth more than the debt.
Right.
And there's a little pink star paying rent underneath it. And the rent that star is paying covers the mortgage, the debt to the bank. And it also covers fixing that rock.
Right.
And it also covers if Patrick moves out and someone else needs to move in and Patrick destroyed it, it covers fixing it back up. And it covers if it takes a little while longer to find another star to live underneath that rock, starfish, not just a star, because they live in outer space. But I'm going a little far.
All right.
But that is good debt. I'm reeling it back in.
Reel it in.
That is good debt wrapped up in a bow, right?
Yes. Yeah. And debt is just a tool, just like a chainsaw is a tool.
Now, chainsaws can be mighty dangerous. I have a couple of wounds on my fingers where I've either tried to get the chain to move a little bit, didn't wear gloves and cut my finger open, or, I've been sawing on a limb and it kicked back a little bit and, hit my shoulder. I mean, chainsaws can be very dangerous in the wrong hands. And if Carrie Milligan is listening, that man never needs to own a chainsaw. Listen, go on Thumbtack, find someone to chainsaw for you and rent it out.
Okay.
Tangent.
Sorry, Carrie. The chainsaw can be a great tool, though. If you're trying to take out a tree and you had just a little axe, how long would it take you? Like 100 years.
Yeah.
But if you have a chainsaw, 30 minutes and, some down power lines later, it's down.
Right.
That was a joke.
Down power lines. I've never done that.
That's good.
I've never dropped a tree on power lines.
That's good.
I have dropped a tree on a house, not a house, but like a building. It was in the woods and it was already abandoned. So I kind of did it on purpose.
Oh, of course, you wanted to see it explode. Yeah.
That's that toddler mindset.
Yeah. And I see it in our toddler. And
there it is.
Two of the same person.
But as you were saying, chainsaw is a very powerful tool in the right hands.
If you know how to use it right, which you do know, and
I do know, I just get a little complacent.
Right.
But I've been through a lot of OSHA training. I've been through a lot of safety classes with the military. And now my son has a mantra. We go around and I'll say, safety what? And he'll say, safety first.
Yeah.
So.
And you threw him in the pool yesterday and he did not like it. And the first words out of his mouth after he resurfaced
Dad, safety first. I was
broke your
you know
heart.
what? You're right.
Broke your heart.
Called me on my game.
Yep.
But in the right hands, it'll take that tree out immediately.
Yes.
In the wrong hands, you're going to cut your arm off.
Right. But when you, with your OSHA training and some of the stuff I've looked at for your Army stuff, you have like, you know what the risks are and you do a risk assessment.
Yeah.
And you understand if this goes wrong, here's how we have to redirect. And that's how you should approach that.
And just a little more from the military side of it, there are protective measures that you can put in place to mitigate some of the risks. It's not going to eliminate the risk, but it mitigates the risk.
Right.
So like that would be like chaps, wearing saw chaps on your legs, wearing a helmet, wearing some type of face protection, some type of hand protection.
So within real estate, it's don't over leverage, have a backup plan, whether it's significant reserves of your own, financial friends you can call. There's a lot of ways to get at it. Worst case, take a loan on your 401k if that's going to keep you from losing and going bankrupt. You know, there's a lot of contingencies.
But don't use the same contingency for multiple loans.
Right.
Like if you have a good primary residence and you know that you have access to cash of up to, let's say, $500,000.
Yeah.
And that is your reserve. And you're using that reserve to offset the risk of some of your rental portfolio loans, but you say, oh, it's good on the first 3 that actually would cover anything go wrong with those. And then you buy 4, 5, and 6 and you say, oh yeah, I still got this. You can't do that because it's already spoken for, but
to a point,
you're able to, you know, spread that risk out over some, but I would be very careful at how you calculate the risk.
Right. And I would not say you have to have dollar for dollar planned out, because then you're going to get into an over analyzing fear state, which our next episode we're going to talk about is actually around overcoming fear.
Okay.
But I think having a backup plan, and I mean, if I can tell you personally, if we got into a situation where all of our debt was called due, we would sell off certain houses, and we know exactly which ones we would sell off.
And we know that there's equity in those homes. Yeah.
We aren't looking at what the market value is of those houses. We're looking at it less, I think about 15% because of agent fees and other costs that come into selling.
Right.
So don't look at just what comps in the area are going for. You have to reduce that if you're going to have an agent sell that house.
No, absolutely.
But we know we would sell off certain houses. We have financial friends we would call, and we have backup reserves that we could use that would hold us over. So we wouldn't have to go the full bankruptcy route.
Absolutely.
But we know our debt it's a tool that could help or hurt. And we're prepared and ready if something does shift.
And when we started building our portfolio, we were scared to death of what happened in 08.
Yeah.
And we didn't live it. I mean, we lived it. We were both in high school when it happened, but we weren't buying real estate.
No.
We weren't actually even a part of the
labor force
or anything.
Yeah.
So we didn't really feel the effects of it. We saw it. We read it on the news. And then 10 years later, we read kind of the synopsis, and then we got to see, you know, The Big Short to kind of get a little understanding in Hollywood's a rendition of it, what happened. And then we started going to these meetups and got firsthand accounts of investors that lived through it.
Yeah.
And that really helped guide us when we first started buying rentals, of saying, okay, the market dipped this much in 2007, 2008, 2009. And it rebounded like this. Now, we really didn't focus on the rebound. We focused on what was the absolute worst part of 08 and how did it affect these investors in the room. And a lot of them were saying, you know, some of the rents dropped 12, 15%.
Right.
Some of their properties, the people just moved out and no one moved back in. And so they had to carry the mortgage on that by themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people that had all of their rentals in one city, like let's say it was a metropolitan city.
Yeah.
And people just moved out of the city because they couldn't afford to live in the city no more. And they all moved to the suburbs. Well, the people in the suburbs in that particular area, they were doing great because all their rentals were full. They may have been 8 to 12% under what they used to get, but they were full. And the people that had all of their rentals in the city, it was just empty.
Yeah.
There was no one moving in because people lost their job. They couldn't afford to live in the city. And they weren't going to commute from in the city to outside the city where their new job was.
Right.
And a lot of people just lost their jobs. They just didn't have anywhere to go.
Well,
And
they
so-
moved in with family and
Right.
households consolidated. Kids didn't move out. Grandparents moved in.
Mhm. What we decided is we're going to have a number in mind of here's how much debt we're going to allow this property to have. So we got to buy at X, and we got to be able to add value by renovating.
Mhm.
And by adding value by renovating, that was us being able to force equity
Right.
into the property
Right.
through
We
the
did
renovation.
a BRRRR
Yeah.
for most of our properties, which is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yeah.
Good night.
It's been a while since we've done
I
one.
know. It's funny because you listen on podcasts and it's like, it's not that hard. Come on. And then here we are.
I know. So, but the idea is that we bought our properties very strategically.
And it worked in the market we bought in. I want to make that like really clear. When we were buying, we bought most of ours off the MLS, and we were able to do a handful of true BRRRRs where we had nothing left or pulled cash out to buy more.
Yeah.
And our first few were true BRRRRs, and it was great. And then I don't know if our criteria got a little more lax because it's like, oh, we have all this cash, like we can. But we managed to build a solid portfolio without a ton of cash on our own.
Yeah. So what made it really work for us was the properties were valued correctly in their distressed state.
Mm-hmm.
So they were valued correctly. The rehab on them was not as expensive as it is today. And the after repair value wasn't hyperinflated. It was
Right.
it seemed all like real. Like today when I look at house prices, when I look at renovation costs, when I look at after repair values, it all seems like fictitious.
You're looking at
to
a
me.
lens from 5 years ago, though.
Right.
Or 4 years ago. I don't want to say that it's not possible to do it. It's just, I think when we were doing that strategy, that was the easiest strategy to do right then.
It was.
And I think the market's going to shift. So we're getting a little bit off topic of Dave Ramsey and debt, but
Good debt, bad debt.
yeah. So I think a lot of people fear investing in real estate because they're worried that the debt's going to make them go bankrupt, like it did Dave. Or I have a friend who's works a corporate job at my old company and wants to get into real estate, but they're working the Dave Ramsey plan, and it's just not in the cards for him right now. And I totally understand, but I also hate to see him miss out on opportunity to buy while his kids are young and let those rentals pay down the loan, appreciate, take that depreciation, all the benefits that come with having rentals.
Yeah.
So it's a hard conversation, but I think the proof is in there are so many multimillionaires in real estate and outside of real estate who use debt. And honestly, I think Dave is probably the outlier in saying not to use debt. I think it's all just knowing the risk and having the contingency plan.
No, I think it'd be a good idea to approach all of this in your personal life, within the four walls of your home and the four walls of your bank.
Yeah.
To be like Dave.
Right.
I think that's smart.
And that's part of what we teach in our first pillar of Secure Legacy Code is getting your personal finances locked down so you're not spending more than you make.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have consumer or personal debt, that you're paying it down.
Yeah.
And that's our long-term plan is to pay off our home, just so that's just one less thing we have to worry about.
Right.
So,
but yeah, you think about it, all the people that were made millionaires through real estate, they didn't do it by having cash for everything.
Some probably did, but the majority.
Majority, no.
Right.
And those that did have cash was probably cash that was probably
or that
crazy entrepreneurial, success.
They make a ton of money a year.
Yeah, or given to them.
Yeah. Right.
In some way or
I mean,
or
real estate is the easiest way for the average Joe who grew up in a double-wide trailer in Whitesburg, Georgia.
Hey, that's me.
To make it.
Yeah.
Because with your teaching salary, there was no way for you to amass tons of cash to put down on the house.
Yeah.
And
it would have never happened.
Right. But by using debt strategically, we were able to grow a pretty healthy portfolio. And we do intend to pay off some of our rentals also as another strategy, so that we have a handful that are free and clear and have debt on some of them. So like we were talking earlier, if we get into a situation where a note is called due, we have other houses that are free and clear that we could get a note from a private lender,
right,
and then use that cash to pay off the one that's getting called.
Yeah.
So it's all in taking the calculated risk And understanding how to read a note is really important too.
Yeah.
Know what the terms are in that mortgage so that you know if you can be called.
Yeah.
And what the situation is. There's risk. Of course there's risk. But if you don't over leverage, you use good financing and good banks and really understand the difference and know what kind of loans you have, it can be the tool that helps you reach financial freedom in 5 years versus 30.
Now, if you're going out there and you're trying to find that good debt and you're trying to build your rental portfolio, I think it's very important for you to understand some of the mortgage vernacular. And some of that is going to come in play of, we have adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, there are balloons, there are negative AM.
Right. So an adjustable rate mortgage is a locked in rate for a time period, and then that rate will increase. And it's usually capped at how much it can increase and how often. We had a HELOC on our last house, and it was an adjustable rate. And it was great when rates were really low. But as it started creeping up higher and higher,
we paid it off.
Yeah. Well, we sold the house and that.
Sold the house, paid off that second, essentially.
Right.
Second position mortgage would be that home equity line of credit.
So a balloon would be like a 10-year loan. And it might be amortized over 30 years, which means you take the payments and the interest rate and calculate the monthly payment as if you were paying it over 30 years.
But at year 10 and one day,
the balance is due.
The balance is due, or sometimes they even have in there a clause to say you can restructure and do a loan modification at year 10 and one day to
a new interest rate
or re-am it, essentially start the clock over.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to restructure it. But
if you have a balloon, if you're looking at a balloon, if it's less than 10 years, run away, in my opinion.
It's more risky. So as long as you have a contingency, it is part of a strategy. Ken McElvoy, which is Robert Kiyosaki's real estate guy, talks about having a rate lock cap, something like that. And what
rate cap lock?
I can't remember the exact term. I can look it up. But it's basically they buy quote unquote insurance on their interest rate from the lender. And it's that it caps how much the rate can go up. So when they locked in 3% notes on commercial properties, it can only go up to 4.5%, as an example. So he, through experience, has learned how to avoid getting in a pickle. But if you have an ARM and that rate adjusts up and doubles, your payment's going to almost double. And then you're in a really bad spot if you can't afford that payment.
Right.
So we like 30-year fixed rate debt, no balloons. We did a bunch of conventional in my personal name. And those were great.
Yeah.
Had to have W-2 income to support the debt to income situation. But that was probably one of the best decisions we made right before I quit. So debt is a great tool if you respect it and treat it well.
Right.
And have a backup plan.
That's right. There are some things that can be associated with debt that can make debt bad and has nothing to do with the mortgage or the terms or any of that, or the asset or any of that. And one of the biggest factors that can contribute to make good debt bad debt is insurance. And now on all these assets, you have to have insurance, especially if they're collateralized with debt.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of states right now where it's very difficult to get insurance policies on their assets.
Yeah, State Farm just left California completely.
Right.
Like
they're out. And that's one thing that I know we'd never considered it to begin with.
Right.
Like insurance being a part of the calculation.
Yeah.
Well, we always considered the number.
Right.
And we always had an idea of what insurance is going to cost, and we'd get quotes. But what we never considered was the possibility of some states are experiencing 100 to 1,000% increase or uninsurable.
Yeah.
And that is just one thing to keep in mind when trying to figure out, is this asset going to be worth keeping? And if it is worth keeping, what kind of debt am I putting on it? So when you're in that initial entry stage of, is this asset worth it? Take in consideration the insurance.
Yeah.
Because insurance used to cost, $119 a month on X property. If you're in Florida, that insurance a month is probably in the $400 to $500 range a month.
Personally, when our tornado came through a few years ago, our rates went up significantly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just because we had claims. Everybody in the States went up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something to factor in with your numbers. With the debt in general, Dave Ramsey is teaching people how to play a certain game.
Right.
And that game is you work until you're 65 and you have a nest egg in your 401k that's invested in the stock market, and you retire at 65 and live a great life until you die.
And what is the average lifespan of an American
80s,
these days?
78.
I'm going to ask Siri real quick. Hey, Siri, what is the average lifespan of an American?
Here's an answer from health.com. The average life expectancy for an American is now 76.
Oh, it went down.
76 years old. So
11 years.
11 years.
Yeah.
Of the good days.
Right. We started reading Rich Dad and learned that we could retire. And retire is, I guess, a nebulous term because what does that really mean? But we have financial freedom to sit here and do a podcast on is it Monday? Yeah.
It's a Monday.
I don't even know what day of the week it is. This afternoon, you're going to go play with the kids and go swimming, and I'm going to work on some other stuff. But we have that time freedom, and we were able to do it because of the debt. Dave Ramsey's model does not work for us because the game we want to play is different than the one that he is teaching to.
Yeah. So there are two board games. One is called Monopoly. One is called Life.
Yeah.
A lot of people have no interest in playing Monopoly.
Well, and I would say there's a third board game that's Risk.
Yeah.
And that's what most people play. It's living paycheck to paycheck. They have their Netflix and their Bud Light or whatever it is.
So you think everyone's playing the game of Risk to begin with.
Yeah.
And then they have to decide if they're going to play Life or if they're going to play Cash Flow.
Or
Monopoly.
just continue on the game of Risk and just live paycheck to paycheck until...
And with no retirement plan.
Right. And then they hit Social Security age and hope that that's enough to cover their expenses.
The sad thing about all this is people that play the game of Risk their whole life usually, and this is not for everyone, but usually have not really focused a lot on health and fitness. And they have degraded their body so much, spending their whole life playing the game of Risk, that once they reach, Social Security age, there's probably 5 years on their clock left.
Right.
If they ever even make it to that point.
Yeah, I think living that lifestyle causes so much stress that it just takes a toll.
It does.
So you've got the game of Risk, then you've got like the game of Life, and that's going the Dave Ramsey path. Yeah. And it's a great game. That's my favorite board game.
And a lot of people will find a lot of, beauty in life playing that game of Life.
Right.
They work, they enjoy their job.
Yeah.
They are hopeful for retirement. They are looking forward to it.
They know where their money goes. Mm-hmm. It's a very
low risk.
Yeah, low risk, but like an easy life. And it's not easy because you still
no life is easy. Right. There's always going to be that but it's random thing that happens.
I feel like risk is stressful because you don't know how to plan for the unexpected. And then if you're playing Monopoly, which is going the real estate investor, or like financial freedom, fire movement life, that has a different kind of stress.
Yeah,
because there is like a hustle mentality with it.
Well, it's the entrepreneurial life.
There's still a hustle mentality with the game of Life, in that you're paying off debt as quick as you can. Mm-hmm. And you might take the Dave Ramsey path and be able to retire at 50.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of success stories like that. Like, I bought my house and I paid it off with the Dave Ramsey thing. My nest egg went from $1,000 to $1 million. Right. And, I was able to buy 4 rental properties with my $1 million. And I was age 45 when I achieved all that, or age 50 when I achieved all that. And now they have 26 years of retirement.
Yeah. And I absolutely love watching Dave Ramsey and seeing him change lives.
He does.
And we have recommended it to tons of people because you have to figure out how to play the game of life, the Dave Ramsey, get your personal finances under control before you can move on to playing Monopoly. Mm-hmm. You have to get out of it's really hard to go from the game of Risk to the game of Monopoly. And don't take that literally, because I know Risk is like a crazy strategy game. I just like the name for this example.
Right. Yeah. Going from paycheck to paycheck to jumping right to buying rental properties or investing in real estate
is risky.
You're going to miss so much. You're going to miss so much about keeping your finances in order. Because if you can't keep your finances in order for your personal side, if you can't handle $100,000 a year income between, let's say, you and your spouse, there's no way you're going to be able to handle $1 million a year income between you and your spouse and all of those properties that would be underneath that.
Yeah. When you taught Dream Life, which is going to be part of our Secure Legacy Code that's coming out later, you did a lesson on, was it Starbucks?
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. and
so,
how that impacted people.
Yeah, the strategy of the opportunity cost of not just the cost of the Starbucks, but the cost of your time going to Starbucks in the line and waiting. And we went through an example on our financial calculator. And go and get your financial calculator out, and we'll go through this together.
Well, tell me how to live my life.
Will you please? I do it like our son goes, pretty please.
Yeah.
I said pretty please if you don't speak toddlerese.
Yes.
All right. So I said an average drink at Starbucks, let's say, costs $5.
Okay. So that's a payment?
That is a payment. And you're going to spend that payment. So you're going to need the calculator first, because we're going to go to Starbucks 3 times a week.
Okay.
Every week, with the exception of 2 weeks. So we're going to go 50 times 3. So we're 150 times to Starbucks a year.
Okay.
$5 a drink.
Okay.
How much a year are we spending at Starbucks?
$750.
$750. Now, if we took that money instead of going to Starbucks and we were able to put $750 a year into the S&P,
okay,
at let's say a very conservative 7%,
okay,
what would you have in 30 years?
Just shy of $1 million, $914,978.25.
So if someone stopped going to Starbucks today,
mm-hmm,
and they started putting $750 a year into the S&P.
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry.
I feel like there's a number.
No, it's 400. No. What did I do? You messed me up because you did do a month. We got to do this monthly.
Okay, we're going to do it monthly. So 750 divided by 12.
62.50.
62.50 a month. Now, this is a very conservative Starbucks drinker. A lot of people go 5 days a week.
All right, 76,000.
76,000.
I did $750 a month.
Okay, $750 a month.
Which, if you think about it too, though, could you cut out your car payment?
So there was a lot of other factors that I went in to get to that $1 million number, because Starbucks is only a very baseline getting into the erroneous spending that people have. And then we went into how much does the average American spend on subscriptions, and it was about $180 a month on subscriptions. So we added that to our
let's
Starbucks.
Call that 250.
So we're at 250 with the Starbucks and subscriptions.
That's 305,000.
So it's 305,000. And then I went into, are you driving the car that you need to be driving? Do you have a car payment that is, crazy expensive? Now, let's say everyone in this class right now sells their car, even if at a loss, and we all buy a $12,000 car, which is very dependable. It's going to get you where you need it to go. And now we have saved almost $400 a month on a car payment, because the average car payment in America was about $598.
So you're almost at $650 total a month. You're at almost $800,000.
$800,000. And then I added in getting rid of your credit card payments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, how can we get rid of your credit card payments? The average credit card bill is about $250 a month. And we got and backed into that. What could we do if you eliminated
You're just over
$1
million.
So that's how we got to $1 million, and say, how do you become a millionaire? By changing something small in your life.
Right.
Make coffee at home. Stop racking up credit card debt.
Right.
Drive a 10-year-old car and not the car you're driving now. And it was a very Dave Ramsey idea going into it, but I factored in the growth aspect of it. And then the biggest factor of all was the time.
Yeah.
And said, on average, people wait about 30 minutes to go out of their way to get to a Starbucks, to wait in line for Starbucks. Even if you do the mobile pickup, you're still driving to that Starbucks and you're picking up your drink. And I just did 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week. That's an hour and a half a week.
At whatever their hourly rate was.
Their hour. And we even did an exercise to figure out what is your hourly rate worth. And a lot of people agreed that they're between $18 and $25 an hour that they value themselves. And when you add that in, we were well over $1 million.
And this comes from a place for Eric more so than me,
absolutely,
of experience, because when we first met, you were driving out of your way to go to Dunkin' Donuts.
I was,
to get a cream cheese bagel and a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was like, why do you spend, what is it, like $4 or $5 back then for all that?
It's like $6.50.
You could buy a thing of bagels, throw it in the toaster, make a cup of coffee, and it would take you less time than driving and sitting in the drive-thru line.
Yeah. It was,
but you
less
did
time.
it because you thought it was more convenient and you were crunched for time. And I think we even wound up putting the bagels at your work, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't even have extra time. It was just, instead of sitting there goofing off on the computer, you had a toaster that made a bagel. Like,
yeah. And it all really came down to, I just didn't want to wake up early.
Right.
I didn't want to wake up earlier, but it took me longer.
And you didn't realize that. So
when you factor in opportunity cost and cutting erroneous spending, pretty much everyone has the ability to play the game of Monopoly.
Right.
People choose to play the game of Risk for the rest of their lives.
And I'm really excited to release Secure Legacy Code, because what we found from the students in Dream Life was that it had such an impact. And that is really like not even all of Pillar 1. And we still have Pillar 2 and Pillar 3 that we're going to teach on. So I don't know. I'm just excited because I see the change that's happened for those students that did it last year. And I'm really excited to see the change that's going to happen for people after they take this new improved version of it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Like I said last week, Secure Legacy Code is going to be life-changing if you allow it. If you come take Secure Legacy Code with us and you don't approach it as this is going to change my life, it won't.
Yeah. It'll
be like any other course you've ever taken, and you put in the work while the course happens, and you're like, whoa, here we go. I'm gonna go change my life, and then life gets back to you, and you don't change it.
I think we're also building it in a way that explains why these things matter. We're not just saying, hey, cut out your Starbucks. Here's the impact that has. And the difference between, would you rather have Starbucks a few days a week, or would you rather have financial freedom? Because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Financial freedom to do XYZ. And in Secure Legacy Code, we're going to help you figure out what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to help you really, truly design the life that you deserve for yourself
and your
family, so that it becomes something that you chase daily.
Right.
Securing the legacy for your life.
Yeah.
Tiffany and I have cracked the code on how to make sure that you can truly secure a legacy. That way, on next week, we have a really good episode with Josh Boyd. He talks about your birth date, your end date, and the most important part is the dash in the middle.
Yeah.
We're going to help you try to figure out how to make sure that dash in the middle leaves the most lasting legacy that you possibly can.
Yeah, and Josh was one of our students in Dream Life, but he's a good friend too that we've known for a long time, and it's really neat to see the impact that it's had for him and his family.
It's amazing.
Yeah. All right.
Did we dispel Ramsey?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, Dave is teaching to play a certain game.
Yeah.
And Robert Kiyosaki and the real estate and debt philosophy is teaching a different game. And if the option is to play that risky game of paycheck to paycheck or the Dave Ramsey route, by all means, like, we want people to go on the Dave Ramsey path. But if you're looking for financial freedom in a shorter time frame and want to create that generational wealth, real estate's the best way to do it. And the fastest way to do it is using that chainsaw tool of debt.
Yeah.
But doing it in a safe way.
Do it carefully. Don't cut your arm off with debt.
Yeah. And use gloves when you're handling chainsaws, Eric.
That's so true. You'd be amazed at how much blood shoots out of your finger when you slice it open.
On that note,
I think we're wrapping it up, y'all. Be sure to join us next week with an amazing interview with a good friend of ours and former Dream Life University student, Josh Boyd. We had a lot of fun recording that up in the mountains of Gatlinburg.
I enjoyed watching you record it from the hot tub. It was great.
Yeah. Her and Rachel got in the hot tub and chatted out there while Josh and I got into the weeds of how Dream Life changed his life, where he's headed, and what kind of success he has found in real estate. And him and his wife are crushing it.
Yeah.
And they just had a baby, so they're crushing it with a newborn at home.
Yeah, it's great.
So be sure to join us next week for that interview. That'll be episode 57. Yeah. Until then, y'all keep chasing your dreams, keep living your life as hyper intentionally as you can. And if you ever have questions or anything, please email us. Let us know what you have to think. Also, if you haven't already and you want a free Audible copy of the Pathfinder's Journey, be sure to send me that DM, PFJ. I only have a few free Audible codes left to give out, and I want it to be you. So that's it for today, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Head over to onpurposeinvestor.com and sign up for our newsletter to get all the latest updates. If you haven't already, We'd really appreciate an honest review wherever you watch our podcast. All right, now go smash that subscribe and follow button for more tips on building your dream life. See you next week, Pathfinders.